Hi everyone! So I'm starting off today with a watercolour marker, and I'm working on a piece of drawing board, or illustrator's board if you like, which I've coated with a very thin layer of acrylic paint, and that's totally dry. And as you can see, I've used a sort of very light yellowy green for the background. And just beginning to outline the head of a Friesian cow here. So quite simply and loosely, just blocking in the main shapes, and having more or less outlined the head, let's put in the outline of the body. So a rear leg there, and then there's a hint of another one here. And then let's pop this animal in a sloping field. And then using a totally clean brush that I'm just spraying with water, what we can do now is to begin to loosen those lines up, because the watercolour paint is obviously, although I've put it down from the marker, it's water soluble. So I can begin to take that paint and move it around on the surface of the painting. And because I've got acrylic underneath, I've got a lovely smooth surface to paint on. And the acrylic paint isn't going to go anywhere, but the watercolour will. So I can use a variety of brush strokes. I can more or less get rid of a line completely if I want to. And I can very quickly just describe the contours of the animal by changing the direction in which I move the brush. And because the paint is so fluid, this is a very quick process. So it's a really nice way to get a lot of colour in one area in a relatively short amount of time. And then I can even extend that and introduce a little bit of a cast shadow on the ground there. And I'm going to let that paint dry now, so I'll be back in a second. But actually, having said that, while that's drying, what I'll do instead is just spray that background line with water and look at the lovely patterns and textures I get. So I think I'm going to keep those that are above the line. Yeah, they could almost be hedgerows going down that top of the hill. But I will pick up some of the paint off of the line itself. And let's see if I can use that to... it's a little bit too watery. I've overdone the water a bit. So what I'll do is I'll just drag that line out for now. And in fact, I think that watercolour's, yeah, that's pretty much dry already actually. So while the background is drying, I'm going to get some white acrylic paint, and I'm going to work over the top of that. No, I've changed my mind again. What I'm going to do is work over the top of the dry watercolour with a purple watercolour marker, and that will allow me to put in some deeper shadows. put in a little bit more detail. I'm not going to go too crazy on the detail with this one. And having done that, once again, I'll take the same brush, another quick spray with the water bottle, and let's see what we can get this time when we work into this paint. So, going to have to be a little bit careful here because I may lift off some of the blue that I put down. That seems to be working reasonably well. And once again, I can soften the edges of these areas of tone that I've created rather crudely with the marker pen. I mean, obviously with the marker pen you can make very precise marks, but as you saw, I haven't taken that approach. And then let's see if I can use that little bit of paint I've got on the brush. What I was going to try and do was introduce a little bit of another cow here, but I don't think I have enough paint on the brush. So we will leave that for the moment, and I am going to let that dry, get my acrylic paint to put some highlights in. So I'm beginning now with the interactive acrylic paints. And I've mixed up a very pale blue using titanium white and Silurian blue. And some of that is going to mix in with the watercolour as I apply it. But that's fine, we'll get some interesting effects. So I can't remember if I said at the start of the video, but this is a Friesian cow. So as I'm sure most of you are aware, Friesian cows have a pattern of dark and light over their hide. Varies from cow to cow, of course. So going with a little bit of a deeper blue now, a bit more of the Silurian blue in the mix. Just picking out the light catching the tops of the ears. And the top of the head there. Same treatment for the top of the nose. And on the edge of that left-hand nostril. Now the mark I made there was a little bit too big. Let's remove some of that. And now just grab some pure white from my brush, and I'm not going to go too crazy with this, but I will just pick out a couple of areas which are really catching the sunlight. And then, yeah, this background is not quite dry, so I need to leave that a bit longer. So what I'll do in the meantime is block in the field with a loose covering of green, of a deeper green, I think. So still using the same brush, we've got a mix of Silurian blue and cadmium yellow. And as well as describing the field, I can use the background to kind of tidy up the outline of the animal here and there. And I don't mind a few sketchy lines on the edges for this particular painting, but nevertheless it's nice to be able to tidy up certain areas. I think I'm going to leave that region there fairly pale, but what I will do is just spray my brush with water and just soften some of this background region and let it kind of mix in with that pseudo hedgerow I created when I sprayed the horizon line. I'll do something similar over there. Oh, I can see a shadow creeping in here from the right hand side of the frame, so I'm working to a deadline now. The sun stops for no man. So let's see how we go. Just soften that up a little bit. Yeah, that's working quite well. So I just sprayed the same brush with water without refreshing the paint. So I'm just going to sweep that across the painting. Just soften things up a little bit there. Okay, so now next I'm going to pop in some sky. So coming in now with a mix of titanium white and Silurian blue. And I'll put that on in a fairly solid way across the top of the painting. But I need a bit more white now, a bit more white to just lighten that as we come down towards the horizon. And so I'll loosely bring that up to the edge of the cow. And what I want to be careful of is I don't want to lose those lovely naturally occurring lines and shapes that I created purely by letting the paint run earlier. So that's the great thing with these mixed media experiments. You can, discover things and techniques, ways of doing things that you perhaps wouldn't have otherwise thought of. So same treatment on the left as we did on the right. And then I think the only thing I need to do now is just kill that dark blue. That's a bit too harsh for that line. And then I'll put in some final features on the face. So coming in with a very pale green now, because the main thing I want to do is just kill the darkness of that line. Oh, and it looks like I've got a little bit of green on the brush, so if I drag that across, I'll actually have more of a pale green covering now. Yeah, so that's okay. Alright, so I'm going back in now with the same blue marker pen that I started with, but I'm using the narrow nib option. So I think I've shown you in previous videos, but these pens, they have a very narrow nib, and then on the other end they have sort of a brush tip. So I was using the brush tip earlier on, but for this, for the detail, I'll use the narrow nib. And so what I'm doing is just adding in a couple of eyes and dark shadow for this nostril. Same for the other one. And then a little bit of a shadow under the lip there, the lower jaw. Perhaps up here under the ears. couple of little touches of yellow ochre in the corners of the eyes. Just to bring a little bit of warmth to the colour scheme. I'll put a bit on the nose as well. And then we need some highlights in the eyes. So going in with the pale blue again. And I think for the purposes of this quick mixed media experiment, I think we'll call that one done. So let me just show you a close-up of the painting, or a better view of the painting. So here's a much better look at the finished painting. So this, as you know, is a Friesian cow painted with watercolour marker and acrylic paint. For me, the best discovery from this little experiment was that spraying just a line of watercolour marker with water creates these lovely textures, and I think I'll definitely use that little technique at some point in the future. So if you're new here, please remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell. If you've got any questions at all, please feel free to leave me a comment below the video and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. But in the meantime, I hope to see you next Sunday for the next episode of The Sunday Art Show. Thanks very much for watching.